Hello and welcome to the Blueprint in Practice, Episode 9, the video series where I show exactly how I implement the blueprint in real life. And if you're new here, the blueprint is probably the simplest approach to fitness on the internet. Is how I've built my physique, a good amount of strength, and elite level cardiovascular fitness, training under 1 hour a week with only 3 exercises, and having simplified the nutritional side down to 3 simple rules. The blueprint is in the description and it's free to read through if you're interested. Alright, so before we get into today's topic, which is the difference between strength and hypertrophy, we're going to talk about training updates. If you're not interested in hearing about that, then you can skip around using the progress bar below, obviously, to parts you might be interested in. But when it comes to training, in yesterday's workout, which is the workout you're watching in this video, I hit 7 reps again, but way smoother than last time. So I was which I'm quite happy about, because I was actually quite scared. I don't know if that's the right word, but I was sort of thinking about whether it was a plateau I was about to hit or not, because it took like around a month to go from doing around 6 reps to doing 7 reps. That's just like pushing it to where it could be in plateau territory. And I'm not exactly sure as to why that is, why it's taken so long. But I'm still progressing, so I'm happy. And I shouldn't plateau now either way, because everything is on point. My training is on point. My nutrition is on point. Everything is on point. And my bulk should last at least like 6 months more. Well into next year with no trouble, like the 200 to 400 calorie surplus I'm eating. And it's going to take a while before I've gained so much size that becomes my new maintenance, which is where I propose you plateau following something like the blueprint. So yeah, it would be weird if I plateaued, but I was sort of scared about that. And when it comes to training, something I've been thinking about and something I'm trying to do moving forward is to stay, instead of going to absolute failure, which is something I've preached in the past, it would probably be better, and also touched on this in the last video, that you sort of maybe keep 1 rep in reserve. So you go to a point, which I define as, you go to a point to where you cannot do another rep with adequate form. So if your form breaks down slightly, fine, or even, I don't know, substantially, fine. Just that it's not like on the chin up, for example, that it's not like a total squeeze and you have to like use a shitload of leg momentum and stuff to get up to the bar. Like, that's not a proper rep. You want it to be relatively smooth. You don't want your shoulders to shrug totally. I don't count that as a proper rep. So that's something to keep in mind. And you don't go to that point if you stay 1 rep shy of failure. And the reason you go to failure is obviously because that's one of, along with volume, the most important factors in hypertrophy, and also to a degree strength. Although there isn't a massive difference between, like, let's say staying 3 reps shy of failure and going to absolute failure. But the reason I say 1 rep shy of failure and not like 3 is because it's very difficult to gauge exactly when you're 3 reps shy of failure. Like, I can't do that personally, and I've been training for 5 years. So beginners definitely can't do that. And that's also proven, I believe, that when beginners think they have 3 reps left, they actually more so have 5, 6, or 7 reps left. And then you're not even getting close to failure. And then you're greatly diminishing your hypertrophy response. So 1 rep shy of failure is quite easy to gauge. Like, when you're hanging there, and this also applies to the push-ups and squats, when you cannot do another rep with proper form, another full rep, right, with proper form, then don't go for it. That's 1 rep shy of failure, give or take. For nutrition, it's more or less just the same. And so sleep has also been the same. It's really just about doing the same stuff over and over again. Yeah, there's not really anything new to say there. I'm going to show some pictures of some meals I've been eating. Rice, beef, eggs, and veggies. That's what I eat most of the time. Basically just that meal. And I'd recommend you to keep your nutrition super simple as well. Like that just simplifies it and makes your tracking of your calories, macros, etc. far easier if you're not actually tracking with an app or whatever. Like if you want to eat all sorts of different stuff, then you sort of have to use an app. But that just sucks, doesn't it? That's at least my opinion. All right. So today's topic is the difference between strength and hypertrophy. And the reason I wanted to talk about this is because I've in the past said, and also in the blueprint, I've said that strength and hypertrophy is basically the same thing. Like as you get stronger, you get bigger, and as you get bigger, you get stronger. That's also mostly true still, but it is more complicated than that. And I sort of wanted to clarify that a bit. So you have hypertrophy here on one side, and then strength on the other side, right? Hypertrophy is increasing the size of your muscles, whereas strength comes from two primary factors, you could say. Number one is increasing the size of your muscles, and this is where they overlap. So as you get bigger, you will get stronger, and as you get stronger, you will also get bigger to a degree. But number two, you can get stronger without getting much bigger, and this is through neural adaptations. So two ways, hypertrophy and neural adaptations. That's sort of how you can get stronger primarily. And neural adaptations, like this is the explains where you sometimes see otherwise very skinny people, or like people who don't look like they work out or anything, who are just super freaking strong or something. That's because they've just trained their neural efficiency to the max. And this is what you train, in traditional powerlifting approaches, or following something like Grease in the Groove, where you try to increase your max pull-ups, push-ups, or whatever. And this is also where the majority of your strength gains in the beginning, as a total beginner, is going to come from. So as you start training, you find yourself progressing super fast on your pull-ups, your push-ups, whatever. Basically, all of this is through neural adaptivity, because you just don't build muscle that fast. So all that new strength is going to come through your nervous system. And what neurological adaptations mean, that's a broad spectrum word for a bunch of different stuff that goes on in your nervous system. But in short, it means that you become your nervous system, or your brain or whatever, becomes more effective at utilizing the muscle mass you already have to produce more force, instead of it having to build more muscle to get stronger, you see. So that's sort of it simplified dramatically, but that's how I like it, And I'm not an expert in strength training at all. I'm not an expert in anything, but I've never personally done strength training. I've only really done hypertrophy training. And this is sort of where they diverge. Like, they overlap greatly. Like, as you get stronger, and if you only do strength stuff, you're also going to get bigger. So they overlap greatly. But there is a difference. You can train right, as I explained, so the neural adaptivity part of it. And you also train for the two in different ways. So you have the hypertrophy training, strength training, right? Like, what is the difference there? And the primary difference lies in training to failure, I think. So what you do typically when you strength train, whether that's something like Grease in the Groove or traditional strength training where you try to like increase your 1 rep max on deadlift, squat, and bench, you want to not fatigue yourself, your nervous system, your musculature, etc., so that you can practice frequently. And I think that's the most important factor, because when it comes to volume, so the amount of training you do and stuff, they're similar between the two. But you want to practice frequently and stay fresh, like you would if you played piano. So I've heard it described like strength is a skill. You get better at getting strong, you could say. So if you do a bunch of heavy pressing with good form, you stay fresh so you don't go to total failure, then you'll get very good at doing that thing. It's all like playing piano. You get very good at playing piano by playing piano often and not, playing piano so hard that your finger starts to bleed. Then you can't play the next day, you see. I think that's sort of an analogy you could use. And this also applies to Grease in the Groove, where you do a shitload of body weight move. This is where it's typically used. So you do a shitload of pull-ups. You don't go to failure. You do them very submaximally. So if you're able to do 10 reps, let's say that's your max, you maybe do 5 reps like 10 times a day. So do a shitload of pull-ups very often, and just don't fatigue yourself. And then you get very good at doing that movement because you do so much, you see. So, and then for so that's sort of the strength training, right? Hypertrophy, you want to go to failure, and that's why it's set apart. Like the two most important factors in increasing the size of your muscles is volume, so you have to train enough. Let's say you have to do enough reps, enough sets, so on and so forth, and then proximity to failure. So you have to get somewhat close to failure. Although you can make up for not going close to failure by just doing more volume. But then you're doing a shitload of volume also, I believe. So those two factors are the most important ones. And for most people, you want to balance them. So if you do a moderate amount of volume, 10 to 20 sets per muscle group a week seems to be ideal for most people. And then get somewhat close to failure. So 3 to 0 reps in reserve, but just aim for 1 because that's the simplest. As we talked about just earlier, that seems to be somewhat what people do. That's what we do in the blueprint anyway. So you train hard and you train enough. That's what matters for hypertrophy. And I think that's sort of the difference. So muscle size and strength, and you can get strong through getting bigger, but you can also get strong through increasing your neural adaptations or making your current muscle, getting better at utilizing your current muscle mass to produce force. And that can be to get better at benching heavily, that could be becoming better at doing pull-ups, etc., etc. And again, they overlap. So if you only focus on this, you are going to get bigger. If you only focus on size, you are going to get stronger, right? But because they overlap in that, as you get bigger, you will get stronger. And as you get stronger, you will inevitably also get bigger. But you have to prioritize one over the other, I guess, if you don't want to totally complicate everything. Because, I mean, you could do both, but then you're never going to get that good at any of them. And it's also just going to be a very complicated training approach. I suspect most people are going to want to stay over here in the hypertrophy block. So when most people think, like the average gym goer, think of anyone who just goes to a commercial gym. They want to get in shape. Like that's muscle mass. They want to grow muscle mass and lose fat. They don't necessarily care about getting extremely strong. Because over here, like if you just focus on hypertrophy, you are still going to get way stronger than you're ever going to need. Like bodybuilders are very, very strong. Those are probably the best example. They're not as strong as powerlifters though, even though they have more muscle, right? But powerlifters also like unnecessarily strong. And the problem with powerlifting and stuff is also strength training, I think, is also that it's far easier to injure yourself. Like if you just go super heavy and stuff like that's a recipe for injury down the road. I also believe like the average powerlifter has some sort of injury all the time. I heard, so that's quite funny. Whereas I don't think that's the case if you're just like a commercial, like casual bodybuilder, I suppose. But that's where we're at in the blueprint. We're in this hypertrophy block mostly. But you're also gonna get super strong over here. Don't get me wrong there. So like you're focused on hypertrophy or getting bigger, losing fat, etc. But you're also going to get super strong. And in the blueprint, we obviously also do circuit training. So we're also going to train our cardio to a quite dramatic degree, a surprisingly good degree. Yeah. So that's the difference between strength and hypertrophy. Again, I'm not an expert in this field. Definitely not the strength portion. But I think this is sort of in the ballpark of being correct. So you have two ways of getting stronger. You have size and neural adaptations. And hypertrophy is just one of them. And that's one way of getting stronger, I suppose. What actually unites the two, that's something I forgot to mention, is progressive overload. So whether you're focused on strength or hypertrophy, the most important factor, or an important factor in both of them, is progressively overloading. So you have to do more, or you have to increase the tension over time. So over here, it might be adding sets, reps, weight, or whatever. And over here, it's typically adding reps or adding weight, sorry. So you try to bench more over time, and that's how you get stronger, right? And that's also how you get bigger. So they're very closely correlated. That's probably the takeaway. They're very closely correlated. So as you get bigger, you get stronger. As you get stronger, you get bigger is mostly true still. But it is more complicated than that, and there are some caveats you got to keep in mind if you want to delve into the details of it. But yeah, I think that's it for this video. So if you enjoyed this video, you can subscribe. I would also appreciate if you liked the video. But actually, more so than those two, if you have any questions, you have anything you're thinking about, any new video ideas, anything, then you can comment, and I'll enjoy answering your comment. That's the most important, or the thing I enjoy the most is answering your guys' questions. So yeah, appreciate that. But yeah, thank you for watching.